Have you ever wondered where the line actually is between healing and hexing?
Right.
Or like how the most ancient spiritual practices on Earth view the intersection of, raw physical sexuality and cosmic power?
It's a huge
It
question.
really is. Because when
Yeah.
you picture a spiritual healer today, there's almost always this cultural expectation of just pure, unadulterated goodness.
Oh, absolutely. The whole love and light aesthetic.
Exactly. Like we imagine a living saint, right?
Right.
Someone who meditates on a mountaintop, burns white sage, and just radiates nothing but peace and positivity.
Right. Which is a remarkably recent and highly sanitized Western invention.
Yeah, we desperately want our spiritual figures to be clean, safe, and easily categorized as the good guys.
But if you look at the historical and, anthropological reality of spiritual power, that pristine image just shatters almost immediately.
Completely shatters. And that is exactly what we are getting into today. Welcome to this deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, our mission is to basically peel back the layers of historical and modern shamanism. We are moving way past the popular sort of aesthetic versions of spirituality you might see on social media.
Yeah, the Instagram version.
Right. And we are wading into a spiritual landscape that is murky, thrilling, deeply misunderstood, and just intensely powerful. I mean, it does not play by modern moral rules.
It really doesn't. And to understand it, we are going to examine the unseen architecture of the energy body, specifically looking at how different cultures mapped systems like the mysterious eighth chakra.
Which blew my mind.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And from there, we need to explore the incredibly blurry boundary between a shaman and a sorcerer,
Right.
the harsh realities of what we'd call black magic, and finally, the highly charged, deeply sensual world of shamanic sex magic.
It is quite a journey, and our sources today are just a massive stack of incredibly dense anthropological texts. We're looking at works like I. M. Lewis's classic ecstatic religion, Neil Whitehead's research on Amazonian dark shamans, plus some modern practitioner manuals.
And cultural case studies stretching from, the Siberian steppes all the way to modern urban energy workers.
Yeah, so the goal here is to navigate this ancient, multi-layered cosmos without judgment. Like whether you are a curious skeptic listening right now or a dedicated spiritual seeker, we want to extract the real-world applications and the profound psychological insights from these traditions.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can even talk about how shamans manipulate the world outside of themselves, like how they heal a sick patient or fight off a psychic attack.
Or how they connect with unseen entities.
Right. We first have to understand how they map the world inside themselves.
The anatomy of the spirit,
Hmm.
or what we commonly refer to as the energy body.
Right. And immediately, when we look at how Western culture first absorbed these concepts, there's just a massive roadblock.
Oh, a huge one.
If you look back at early Western esotericists, specifically figures like Madame Blavatsky in the late 19th century, I mean, she was hugely influential in bringing Eastern concepts like chakras to the West.
She was the founder of the Theosophical Society, yeah.
Right. But she and her contemporaries had this profound, almost phobic distrust of the lower half of the human body.
Yeah, Blavatsky was heavily influenced by a very specific ascetic interpretation of Raja Yoga.
The ascetic meaning like denying the flesh.
Exactly. In her seminal work, The Secret Doctrine, she essentially warned her readers against even engaging with the lower three chakras.
The root, the sacral, and the solar plexus.
Right. For that Victorian audience, higher chakras located up in the head or above it were seen as divine, pure, and spiritual.
Right, the safe zones.
But the lower chakras, located down in the belly and the base of the spine, were seen as animalistic, primitive, and just highly dangerous.
Wow.
Yeah, Blavatsky went so far as to claim that utilizing these lower centers was strictly the domain of sorcery.
See, I have to push back hard on Blavatsky's elitist view here because it fundamentally misunderstands how energy works in almost every indigenous tradition.
Oh, completely.
Like, think about it like building a towering 100-story skyscraper. Blavatsky is basically telling you to focus entirely on the penthouse suite while being utterly terrified of going into the basement to pour a foundation.
It's structurally impossible.
Exactly. How on earth can you reach the higher spiritual planes or handle cosmic energy if you haven't secured the foundation? In the shamanic view, those lower chakras are not evil.
No, they're your grounding cords.
They are what give you vital, stabilizing contact with the earth. If you adopt that, Victorian negativity toward your own physical center, you are essentially dissociating from the very energies that keep you alive.
Insane. You are severing the anchor. The early Western occultists were trying to make Eastern concepts palatable to a Victorian Judeo-Christian audience that already believed the flesh was inherently sinful.
Right, they projected their own issues onto it.
Exactly. They infused an ancient spiritual map with their own puritanical prejudices. But the traditional shamanic view is infinitely more adaptable, and it isn't burdened by that kind of bada shame. Furthermore, it's not locked into the standard 7-chakra system that you see on, like, every yoga studio poster today.
This was one of the most surprising things of the research. The 7-chakra model is completely arbitrary, depending on what spiritual tradition you're looking at.
Oh, entirely.
The texts dive into something called the Melchizedek system, which maps the energy body entirely differently. Instead of just 7 distinct wheels of light, this system uses a mathematical progression based on a musical scale.
Which is such a different way to conceptualize it.
It is. You have the base chakras, and then you hit a half step, a literal energetic wall or frequency shift before you can access higher vibrations. Then you move up to the heart, experience a change in polarity at the throat, move to the eyes, the pituitary gland.
You mean you hit another half step there?
Yes, another half step before you pass through the crown of the head to the 8th chakra.
And geometrically, that 8th chakra sits roughly a hand's width above the physical head.
Which is wild to think about.
It is described in these traditions not just as another energy center, but as the literal doorway to the next world. It's the point where individual consciousness bridges into the collective, or the cosmic.
But wait, if the 8th chakra is physically outside the human body, hovering above the head, how do you even access it? Like, how do you manipulate an energy center that isn't tethered to your biology?
Well, by understanding that your biological body is simply the densest part of your energy field, the energy doesn't just stop at the skin.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, different ancient cultures understood this and mapped the power centers of the body based on their specific spiritual technologies and environmental needs.
So the standard 7 is just one map.
Right. The ancient Egyptian system, for example, mapped up to the 13 chakras.
13. And their map was incredibly specific. Like, they had 2 entirely separate heart chakras.
Yes. One dedicated to pure universal spiritual love and another dedicated to emotional, bodily, human love.
They even mapped chakras on the face. I mean, there was chakra on the chin and a chakra on the nose.
Which sounds bizarre to a modern listener.
Totally. I was like, no chakra?
But it makes sense when you understand the psychology behind it. In the Egyptian energetic system, the chin chakra was about projection.
Like projecting your image.
Exactly. It was the energetic center of presenting a specific face or identity to the external world. And the nose chakra was a directional point. It represented the absolute, unbroken focus of human intent.
Wow. So what this diverse mapping teaches us is that the physical body has accretions of power. There are areas of greater electrical and energetic density that can be utilized.
Yeah, regardless of the map.
Right. Whether you are using a 7-chakra model, a 13-chakra model, or an 8-chakra musical scale, the goal is identifying and mobilizing those specific focal points.
So for you listening, why does it matter if the ancient Egyptians had a nose chakra or if the Melchizedek system has an 8th chakra hovering above your head?
Right. Why care?
Because it challenges you to completely rethink what your body actually is. You are not just a biomechanical machine made of meat, bone, and chemical reactions.
According to these traditions, you are a customizable map of energetic focal points. Your intent, your ability to ground yourself under stress, your connection to whatever you consider the divine, it is all mapped out in your energetic architecture.
But that architecture, that ability to pull and direct energy, it brings us to a massive ethical dilemma.
Right.
If building that foundation and accessing those power centers gives a person real, tangible influence over the world, what stops them from misusing it?
And this brings us right back to Blavatsky's fear of the lower chakras and sorcery.
Exactly. We have to ask, if the power itself is just a mechanism, what actually separates a malevolent sorcerer from a healing shaman?
This is where that spiritual razor's edge comes into sharp focus. Anthropologist Douglas Sharon spent extensive time studying a famous Peruvian curandero or healer named Don Eduardo Calderon.
A very well-documented figure.
Yeah, and Don Eduardo makes an incredibly striking observation about this exact boundary. He states that the techniques, the rituals, the physical power objects on the altar, the chants, and the methods for entering altered states of consciousness used by malevolent sorcerers.
The practitioners of black magic.
Right, are virtually identical to the techniques used by a shamanic healer.
There is literally no mechanical difference.
None.
A sorcerer might use a specific carved stone and a chant to induce illness, while the shaman uses the exact same stone and the exact same chant to extract illness. The tools are completely neutral.
So what's the dividing line?
The sole dividing line, according to Calderon's tradition, is ethics and attunement. Sorcerers become utterly obsessed with the technique of power.
They just want the control.
Yes, they want the mechanism of control, but they completely ignore the spiritual values, the ethical harmony, and the deep reciprocal connection to the earth that is required to use that power responsibly.
Let me stop you there because Calderon applies this logic in a way that is just a massive paradigm shift.
It really is.
When Calderon learned how Western medical doctors are trained, he was reportedly incredulous. Like, he was completely shocked that a modern surgeon or physician trains for years and years in pure technique.
Right. They learn the mechanics of surgery, the precise application of pharmaceuticals.
Algorithms of diagnosis.
Yeah.
But they receive absolutely zero training in spiritual attunement, the ethics of the soul, or harmony with the wider environment.
It is a profound critique of Western materialism.
It is. And it makes me wonder, by the traditional indigenous definition, where obsessing over mechanical technique while completely ignoring spiritual attunement is the literal definition of sorcery, does the Western medical system essentially operate like a giant, highly organized guild of sorcerers?
I mean, I see where you're going with that, but let's add some nuance.
Okay, fair.
A modern surgeon isn't actively trying to manipulate the spiritual fabric to cause harm, which is the hallmark of a dark sorcerer.
True, true.
However, Calderon's point is that when you divorce the mechanics of healing from the soul of the patient and the environment, you are operating in a spiritually dead zone.
You're just treating the human being as a machine.
Right, which is a form of energetic violence in the shamanic worldview. In a tribal setting, power itself is neutral. It is the intent of the practitioner that colors it.
And because of that neutrality, the shaman's position in a community is inherently ambiguous and often terrifying.
Definitely. There is a brilliant quote in the anthropological text by Alan Campbell that sums up this terrifying ambiguity perfectly. He writes, all very well to be the village doctor, but it's not much of a role or an office to be the village killer.
The village killer. That is just, it's a jarring phrase.
It is, but it captures the absolute sociological necessity of the shaman. In indigenous societies, your local shaman might be a comforting healer to you, but they're viewed as a lethal, terrifying threat by the neighboring tribe. To protect their own community from spiritual or physical attacks from outsiders, the village shaman must possess the capacity for profound violence.
They have to know exactly how to curse, how to hex, how to harm.
And how to navigate the absolute darkest parts of the spiritual ecosystem.
Because if they didn't know how a curse was constructed, they wouldn't know how to dismantle it.
Precisely. If they were just a being of love and light, they would be completely useless as a protector. They are essentially the tribe's nuclear deterrent.
Wow. Which makes the shaman a highly marginalized figure. They are revered, yes, but they're also deeply feared by their own people.
Oh, entirely. They are the ultimate trickster figure, the one who willingly walks in the dark and interacts with horrifying entities so that the rest of the village can live in the light.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because that transition walking into the dark leads us to communities where practitioners specialize almost entirely in the terrifying aspects of this cosmos.
Since the power's neutral, yeah.
Exactly. There are shamans who focus their entire practice on the heavier, destructive energies. Like, let's look at the Altai region of Siberia, specifically the Tlingit tribe. They still practice an ancient tradition called Karajang, which translates to the black custom.
And the Tlingit explicitly differentiate their practitioners. They have white shamans, known as the Akam, and black shamans, the Karakam.
So what do the white shamans do?
The white shamans operate almost like community priests. Their ceremonies are conducted during the day. They pray to the spirits of the mountains. They burn purifying juniper. They conduct seasonal worship rituals.
Very community-focused.
Yes. And crucially, they do not fall into deep cataleptic trances to travel to the underworld. They deal with the upper world, with light, and with social harmony.
But the black shamans operate entirely differently. Like, they work at night. They sacrifice animals to underworld spirits. They deliberately induce severe trances to journey down into the lower worlds, interacting with entities of decay, disease, and death.
Right.
Now, our modern Western brains immediately hear the term white shaman and think good, and we hear black shaman and automatically assume evil.
Of course.
But the anthropological texts are explicit that binary moral code does not apply here at all. In fact, the local Tlingit people believe that the most serious, deeply rooted illnesses, especially severe mental diseases or sudden violent afflictions, can only be cured by a black shaman.
Yeah, the distinction isn't moral, it is geographical and vibrational. It's about which realm the practitioner is willing to access.
Right.
A white shaman works with preventative care and social cohesion. A black shaman is willing to descend into the absolute chaos and terror of the underworld to literally wrestle a patient's soul back from the grip of a malevolent entity.
But it's like the difference between a holistic wellness coach and a trauma surgeon.
That's a great way to put it.
Think of a white shaman as your general practitioner. They tell you to eat your vegetables, they align your baseline energy, they keep you harmonious. A black shaman is an oncologist.
Yep.
They are dealing with the toxic, the terrifying, the absolute darkest and most destructive aspects of biology. You wouldn't call an oncologist evil because they work with lethal doses of radiation and deadly tumors. You recognize they're doing dangerous, heavy work to eradicate a lethal threat.
That analogy holds up really well, but we need to take it a step further. Unlike an oncologist who operates in a sterile, brightly lit hospital room wearing protective gear, the black shaman is actively absorbing that radiation themselves.
Oof.
They are letting the disease, or the spirit causing the disease, enter their own energetic field to neutralize it. And we see this willingness to engage with dark forces taken to an even more extreme, almost incomprehensible degree in the Amazon.
With what anthropologists call dark shamans.
Yes.
Neil Whitehead's research on this is genuinely chilling. He studied the practice of Canaima among indigenous groups in the Guiana highlands of South America. Canaima is a form of ritualized assault sorcery, and it involves physical mutilation and murder.
It is incredibly difficult for the Western mind to process. In these specific Amazonian cultures, the dark shaman engages in highly ritualized acts of violence, sometimes minor bloodletting, sometimes much worse, to satisfy a pantheon of incredibly predatory, cannibalistic, cosmic deities.
Wait, I need to make sure I'm understanding the logic here.
Right.
The shaman is committing acts of violence and mutilation in order to protect their tribe.
Yes, it is a terrifying form of shamanic mediation. The worldview of these tribes is that the universe is filled with massive predatory forces that view human beings as food energetically or literally.
Wow.
So the dark shaman steps in as a mediator. By committing a diminished, controlled level of violence themselves and offering that energy to these cannibalistic deities, the shaman appeases them. They pay the toll.
Like an offering.
Exactly. By doing so, they protect the wider community from facing the full, unmitigated wrath and mass predation of those cosmic forces. It is the ultimate heavy burden, operating entirely outside of any Western moral framework. It is taking on the sin of murder to prevent the annihilation of the village.
That is just staggering. But it makes me wonder if these dark shamans are out there essentially launching psychic ICBMs at neighboring tribes or feeding cannibal deities. There has to be a mutual assured destruction protocol.
Oh, there is.
Right. Like, how does a traditional community actually defend itself against that level of concentrated malevolent intent? This brings us to the mechanics of shamanic warfare and psychic protection.
Shamanic warfare is highly strategic, and it is exhausting. The accounts from the Evenk people, an indigenous group in northern Siberia, provide a perfect case study.
Yeah.
Among the Evenks, sudden sickness, a bad hunt, or a string of misfortune is rarely viewed as random chance. It is almost always diagnosed as the result of an alien clan unleashing their protective spirits to attack them.
So it's an act of war.
Always.
And when that happens, the clan shaman doesn't just passively sit by a fire and try to heal the sick person with herbs. They literally go to war. I Am Lewis's text describes this vividly. The shaman creates a mystical iron curtain of tamed spirit watchmen.
Yeah, they go into trance and energetically construct a massive border wall of guardian spirits to fence in the clan's entire territory.
And if the hostile spirits manage to penetrate that iron curtain and affect a clan member, the shaman's primary duty is exorcism.
They must locate the invading entity, extract it from the patient, and violently drive it down into the lower world.
But in a warfare scenario, defense is not enough.
No, once the patient is secure, the shaman will unleash their own clan's guardian spirits to retaliate against the clan that initiated the attack.
And these aren't just abstract blobs of light. Lewis notes that these retaliatory spirits often take the form of monstrous zoomorphic creatures.
We are talking about massive, ethereal bear spirits, jagged-toothed wolves, or giant eagles sent across the spiritual plane.
Literal monster spirits sent to tear into the energetic defenses of the enemy shaman. It is literal psychic warfare.
Which takes an unimaginable toll on the shaman's physical body. But it is not just the elite shamans fighting these battles. The texts also detail how everyday people protect themselves from the fallout of this psychic warfare.
Right, there are physical protection techniques that anyone can use. Let's go back to Don Eduardo Calderon, the Peruvian curandero. In his interviews, he demonstrates exactly how to protect your own energy centers if you feel you are under psychic attack, or even just dealing with a highly toxic person.
Which we've all experienced.
Exactly. He explains that the most important center to protect in your daily waking life is the belly. It is the axis of the physical body. It is where your vital life force is generated and stored.
And to protect yourself from negative energies, he says you must physically cross your hands over your belly with your fingers pointing downward toward the earth.
It acts as a physical closed circuit, grounding your energy and preventing external forces from hooking into your sacral or solar plexus chakras.
But what is truly fascinating is the shift he describes at the end of life. While the belly is the center of your living biological world, at the exact moment of death, the energetic priority changes. The most important center to protect is no longer the belly, but the heart.
Yes. And he explicitly connects this to the ancient Egyptians. He explains that this is precisely why Egyptian mummies were buried with their arms crossed tightly over their chests.
It's the exact same technology.
The physical act of crossing the hands over the heart center at death is believed to break any remaining negative energy patterns, sever earthly attachments, and prevent the soul from being caught in spiritual traps as it transitions.
It is a profound use of the physical body as an anchor for spiritual intent. But beyond physical postures, the texts on modern Reiki shamanism give us what might be the single most powerful psychological tool in the entire study of magic.
Oh, this part is amazing.
The ultimate impenetrable defense against a psychic attack, against black magic, against a curse, is simply refusing to believe you are vulnerable.
I want to break down exactly how this works because it sounds almost too simple, but it is deeply rooted in human biology.
It is.
A curse often operates on what we call the nocebo effect,
Right.
which is the dark, destructive mirror of the placebo effect. If you take a sugar pill believing it is medicine, your brain can heal your body. Right. But if a sorcerer, or even just a highly manipulative, toxic person in your life, tricks you into believing that you are cursed, that you are inherently flawed, or that they have power over you, your brain goes into a state of chronic stress.
You open the door from the inside.
Exactly. You hand them your power.
Yeah.
You internalize their malicious intent, your cortisol levels spike, your immune system crashes, and suddenly you are sick. The curse worked, but you were the one who executed it on yourself.
Reclaiming your personal sovereignty, the absolute unwavering knowledge that your core energy is invulnerable and belongs only to you, is the ultimate shield. It cuts the circuit.
It is about maintaining the absolute integrity of your inner cosmos. But there is a logistical problem here.
What's that?
Generating that kind of impenetrable psychological shield, constructing iron curtains of spirit watchmen, and fighting off zoomorphic monsters requires immense, staggering amounts of energy.
Oh, absolutely.
A shaman cannot do this just by eating well and getting 8 hours of sleep. Where do they get the profound, world-altering fuel required to operate at this level?
And this is where all the disparate threads of this deep dive pull together. Because the anthropological record reveals that this massive influx of power almost always comes from the most potent, visceral, and biologically hardwired drive human beings possess. Sexuality. We have to talk about the erotic cosmos, spirit marriages, and the reality of shamanic sex magic.
In modern Western cultures, religion and sexuality are kept strictly segregated.
They're very strict.
In many mainstream traditions, sexuality is viewed as something to be suppressed, controlled, or at best, tolerated solely for reproduction. But in traditional shamanism, the spiritual and the sexual are inextricably functionally linked.
The French anthropologist Robert Hamayan argues forcefully that shamanic seances, particularly among indigenous Siberian groups, are fundamentally sexual encounters.
When you read I.M. Lewis's documentation on this, it is undeniable. The concept of spirit marriage is a cornerstone of global shamanism. Shamans don't just pray to spirits, they literally marry them.
Then they consummate those marriages.
Yeah. During highly charged, ecstatic community dances, the shaman will wear the animal skin or the feathers of the specific spirit they are married to. As the drumming reaches a fever pitch, their dramatic movements in the dance physically mime the act of wedding or copulating with this invisible spirit partner.
And Lewis points out that this is not just symbolic poetry or theatrical metaphor. It is a deeply literal, physical experience for the practitioner. The shaman is empowered specifically by this erotic, ecstatic relationship.
Wow.
The sheer biological force of sexual ecstasy is the mechanism that bridges the gap between the mundane human world and the divine. They are using the orgasm, or the sustained buildup of sexual tension, as a rocket booster to launch their consciousness into the spirit world.
The imagery from the Borneo Dayaks illustrates this perfectly. They have massive public rituals where the priests and priestesses become possessed by the two supreme opposing deities of their cosmos.
The hornbill bird representing the upper world, and the water snake representing the lower world.
Right, and this ritual is explicitly represented as a divine coition, a cosmic sexual union. The chants they sing during this ritual are wildly explicit. The entire community sings. They let down the pole into the vagina of the water snake. They lower the staff of the hornbill into the open gong.
The pole and the gong are their ritual instruments, but the metaphor is transparent, and the congregation supposedly mirrors these acts of intercourse during the ceremony to replicate the cosmic creation.
What we are seeing here is an ancient, profound understanding that sexual energy is the life force. It is the fundamental energy of creation. By channeling this, the shaman is plugging directly into the raw, unrefined fuel of the universe.
And what I find equally fascinating is how this spiritual sexuality completely transcends conventional gender roles and biological boundaries.
Yes, because the energy is what matters. The physical biology of the shaman often adapts in wild ways.
Among the Arctic Chukchi people, there is a recognized class of male shamans known as soft men. These are homosexual or highly effeminate men who take on women's clothing, roles, and mannerisms because they have male spirit husbands. And the anthropological lore says that these spirit husbands are the true head of the household. They are so powerful that they literally boss around the shaman's actual human husband.
That's incredible.
We also see the reverse. There are female shamans in various traditions who must remain entirely celibate in the mundane world because their otherworldly spirit husbands, often powerful Hindu deities in certain Southeast Asian traditions, are incredibly jealous and will strike them dead if they sleep with a mortal man.
We also see male shamans who take on female attributes specifically because they are possessed by female goddesses. The spiritual relationships adapt to whatever is necessary to facilitate the flow of power, completely disregarding Western heteronormative binaries.
The spirit world, as the poet John Milton wrote, can either sex assume or both. It is entirely fluid.
I think we really need to pause and challenge the way we've been conditioned to view this. Like, we have centuries of puritanical programming deeply embedded in our culture telling us that the flesh is sinful.
Right, that the body is a dirty, flawed vessel.
And that to be holy, you have to overcome your physical desires. But in shamanism, the flesh, and specifically its desires, its heat, its ecstasies, its orgasms, is the very vehicle for salvation.
It is not a sin to be overcome. It is the exact technology you use to connect to the cosmos and heal your community.
It radically reframes sexuality from a base, animalistic urge into a sacred high-voltage technology. But, and this is the crucial caveat that brings us back to the danger of sorcery, because it is a high-voltage wire, it is exceptionally dangerous if mishandled.
Very dangerous.
This ancient understanding of sexual energy hasn't disappeared in the modern world. It has simply evolved into modern energy practices, and the warnings about misusing this power are more severe than ever.
So how does this ancient battery translate to us today, living in modern cities?
Exactly. The modern practitioner manuals bring this right to our doorstep. Shaman Durek, in his book Spirit Hacking, has a very blunt, modern way of phrasing this ancient concept. He says, sex is pop rocks. Yeah, it is pure, explosive expression energy. He explains that when we experience profound physical pleasure, our nervous system finally feels safe. And when we feel safe, our perceptual gateways, our energetic borders open completely wide.
Or drop our armor.
Exactly. Think of it like your computer's firewall. When you are intimate with someone, you are essentially dropping your energetic firewall. If you do that on a secure, trusted, private network with someone you love, you can download massive upgrades to your system. You share beautiful energy.
But if you drop your firewall on a public, unsecured Wi-Fi network, say, with a total stranger you met on an app who is carrying a ton of unresolved trauma, you invite malware into your system.
Which is precisely why casual, disconnected, or shame-filled sex is viewed as so spiritually hazardous in these traditions. When those perceptual gateways are blown open during intimacy, whatever energy is in that room or embedded in that person's field has direct, unfiltered access to your own energetic architecture.
Durek talks about a very specific, terrifying danger here, the sexual succubus.
Yeah, whether you view this as a literal demon or a metaphor for a toxic psychological attachment, the mechanics are the same.
He claims that when we have a lot of casual, disconnected sex, especially if that sex is laden with guilt, shame, fear, or emotional numbness, we attract these underworld entities. They are drawn to the chaotic frequency.
They attach to the human energetic field, specifically latching on to the sexual glands, like parasites with energetic suction cups.
And once attached, they feed on the energetic distortions. They feed on the darkness of those misaligned encounters. According to this modern shamanic view, these parasitic entities infect the host's mind with even more guilt, cravings, and shame, creating a self-sustaining feedback loop.
This accumulation of dark, heavy energy in the lower chakras eventually signals the subconscious mind to manifest physical disease. Why? Because on some deep subconscious level, the host feels dirty and believes they need to be punished.
Think about the culture we live in right now.
I know. I really want to ask you listening. In a modern world built entirely on dating apps, hookup culture, swiping right for instant gratification, are we unwittingly creating a massive global feeding ground for these energetic parasites?
It's a sobering thought.
Are millions of people blowing their perceptual gateways wide open with total strangers while feeling completely numb, disconnected, or secretly ashamed?
From an energetic standpoint, it is a recipe for mass spiritual infection.
So what's the fix?
The modern shamanic remedy for this, as described by Dirac, is a visualization technique he calls the second chakra scrub. It is designed to energetically clean the biological spacesuit.
Okay.
The practitioner uses focused intention, visualization of purifying light, and specific breath work to literally scour the sacral chakra, the energy center located just below the navel, flushing out foreign attachments and residual energy from past partners.
But the real goal is prevention, right?
Always. And the preventative measure is what these traditions call conscious copulation. The teaching is that every sexual engagement, no matter what, must be devotional.
Every caress, every kiss, every moment of intimacy must be done with heart-centered intention and absolute presence.
It doesn't matter if it is a lifelong partner of 30 years or a short-term encounter. If the intention is pure, present, and honoring of the other person's divinity, the intention itself becomes the shield.
The malware cannot enter a devoted connection.
However, even with strong intention, there is a massive shadow side to sex magic.
Oh, for sure. The Shamanic Archetype workbook we reviewed dives deeply into this. The shadow emerges when a practitioner learns how to cultivate their kundalini energy and their sexual magnetism, but they don't use it to heal or connect.
Instead, they use it to gratify their own ego. They use that intense charismatic energy to seduce, to manipulate, and to dominate others.
It's using the sacred life force as a tool for narcissistic power.
Exactly. It is the ultimate form of modern sorcery. And the historian Andrzej Znamensky details how this ancient practice can become wildly distorted and commercialized in the modern New Age movement.
Yeah, he documents the rise of a highly controversial neo-shaman named Swiftear, who was born Gunny Reagan.
Right.
Swiftear built a massive following by claiming he was initiated by a Cherokee woman named Phoenix Firewoman. According to his teachings, she supposedly taught him about 9 different anatomical types of vaginas and penises and 5 distinct levels of cosmic orgasm.
I mean, let's be honest, that sounds significantly less like ancient, grounded indigenous wisdom and a lot more like a charismatic cult leader's personal sexual fantasy disguised as spirituality.
Yeah, it really is.
And that is the danger of cultural appropriation mixed with esoteric power. It perfectly illustrates what happens when Westerners attempt to borrow these intense, ecstatic technologies without adopting the cultural grounding, the communal ethics, and the rigorous, often painful discipline of the traditional shaman.
Without the ethics of the village, it quickly devolves into sexual sorcery, egocentric delusion, and the exploitation of followers. Sexual energy illuminates the mind and connects us to the divine when used with devotion, but used carelessly or selfishly, it burns the house down.
It is a high-voltage wire. You can use it to light up a city, or you can electrocute yourself.
Synthesizing all of this material, from Madame Blavatsky's Victorian fears to the Amazonian jungles, we see one incredibly consistent theme. The shamanic worldview demands extreme, uncompromising personal responsibility.
It truly does.
Whether you are manipulating the Melchizedek 8th chakra, fighting off curses with zoomorphic spirits, or engaging in conscious copulation, the power itself is always neutral. Your integrity, your ethics, and your self-awareness are the absolute only things keeping you from becoming the village killer.
And that is the perfect way to wrap up this incredible journey.
We have covered massive ground today. We started by mapping the invisible architecture of the energy body and the eighth chakra. We walked the razor-thin, ethical tightrope that separates the healing shaman from the malevolent sorcerer.
We explored how black shamans willingly plunge into the underworld, how communities construct psychic iron curtains for defense, and finally, how to unlock and rigorously protect the ecstatic, world-building power of your own sexual energy.
It is a complex, often terrifying, and deeply contradictory cosmos that challenges almost every paradigm of modern Western thought.
To you, listening to this deep dive, whether you view these concepts as literal, objective spirits flying through the night sky, or you view them as profound, highly effective psychological metaphors for navigating the human condition, the core lesson remains exactly the same.
Your energy, your psychological boundaries, your physical body, and your sexuality are deeply, deeply sacred. You possess immense power.
And you are only vulnerable to attack if you agree to be.
Remember the ultimate defense, reclaiming your absolute sovereignty.
Yeah.
So we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day. If a traditional shaman's immense power comes from maintaining an intimate, ecstatic, and fiercely devoted relationship with the unseen world, look around your own life. Look at your inner cosmos. What invisible forces, what daily habits, what lingering fears, what deep-seated passions are you currently married to?
And more importantly, are those marriages healing you, or are they quietly draining your power?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take care of your energy out there.